What's up guys, I'm Roderick, aka Rodman, and welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the absolute worst weapon from every Souls game. The cool thing about the Souls series is there's so much variety. You can do crazy builds, strength, dexterity, magic, and there's great weapons to choose from. But what are the worst of the bunch? If you like retro video gaming, anime, and gameplay videos, don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe for more content just like this. So let's get right into the video. So for the worst weapon in Demon Souls, it is by far the Needle of Eternal Agony. And what's disappointing about this weapon is in Demon Souls, there's not a lot of bad weapons. Demon Souls overall is a pretty good game. It has good areas, good bosses, and good enemies, and good weapons. But this weapon right here completely missed the mark. And here are the reasons why. One reason is that the stat requirement for using this weapon is absolutely ridiculous. You need 20 dexterity and 20 faith to use this weapon. The damage output is not very good at all either. And one thing that this is really kills the weapon right here, even though it's already terrible, it's non-buffable. You can't infuse this thing with anything. You can't light it on fire or anything like that. So that really kills this weapon. And you know a weapon is bad in the Soul series when people make challenge runs using it. But that's what I think the worst weapon is in Demon Souls. It's definitely going to the Needle of Eternal Agony. But let's go ahead and move on to Dark Souls 1. This was actually a toss-up between two weapons, and I'm going to talk about them both a little bit. But I believe that the worst weapon in Dark Souls 1 is going to the Whip. And that's because A, its moveset is kind of wonky. It has a lot of wind-up time. B, it's ineffective against enemies that have armor. Really, the whip is only decent against enemies that are not wearing clothes, which is like 1% of the game. Most enemies you're going to be fighting are going to have clothes on. They're going to have armor. But the second weapon that I was going to say is the worst in the game is the short bow. Because literally it has one use. You don't ever, it's a terrible weapon. You don't ever actually use it for combat. It has one use, and that's getting the Drake sword at the beginning of the game. And my thing is, it's not like the Drake sword is all that great. Like, it's good for the first one or two areas, but then it completely falls off a cliff after that. But that's why I think the worst weapon is in Dark Souls 1. There isn't as much variety in Dark Souls 1, I believe, as some other games. So there aren't really a lot of bad weapons. But definitely going to the whip. And that's actually a trend in the Souls series is whips aren't really good except if you're playing Elden Ring. Elden Ring whips are kind of broken. But every other Souls game, whips suck. But let's go ahead and move on to Dark Souls 2. So hands down, the worst weapon in Dark Souls 2 is definitely going to the handmade ladle. And I kind of feel kind of cheap for putting this on the list because I believe this item is literally a troll item. Like, I don't think you're really supposed to be using this. It has a D in all scaling. The moveset sucks. But if like, for example, if you're on PvP and you're losing to people using the handmade ladle, you need to sell your PlayStation, you need to sell your Xbox, your PC, because you're just not good at video games, bro. This weapon is complete fodder, and you should be embarrassed if you are losing to it. But on the other side of that coin, if you're melting people with the handmade ladle, you are a Souls god. Like, you are a Souls god at this game. It's ridiculous. But the handmaid's ladle, honestly, is probably the worst weapon in the entire Souls series. It has nothing beneficial to offer. There's nothing cool about it except for killing bosses with it because it's so bad. But let's go ahead and move on to Dark Souls 3. So I'm not gonna lie, there are actually quite a few really bad weapons in Dark Souls 3. For example, the Mail Breaker, the Dancer's Twin Daggers, the Candlestick Sword. But out of all of those bad weapons, the worst is by far the Smoldering Iron. What makes this weapon so bad is just that I believe that they intended this weapon to be PvP based, because in PvP, if you get consecutive hits, it actually lowers the amount of healing you get from Ex's Flash for your enemy, which I guess is actually pretty cool. But other than that, this weapon sucks. The scaling sucks. You have descaling, so you're not going to be doing any damage. And guess what? This thing does 90% fire damage, which means that literally any person that you're going against, most enemies, most PvP and armor are going to have a lot of fire resistance. So that means that most of his damage is going to be mitigated anyways. So, and this weapon art is kind of troll too. It's kind of a charge attack, but Smoldering Iron is one of the worst weapons in all of gaming. Not as bad as the Handmaid's Ladle, but definitely up there. So let's go ahead and move on to Bloodborne. Now this is actually really difficult because I believe one of Bloodborne's strong points is that not a lot of weapons are bad. I feel like every weapon has a use and can be very good. But I believe the weapon that's at the bottom of the list is definitely going to go to the Cost Parasite, because it's a weird like faith build. It costs bullets to use, and not only that, it takes up a gem spot that you could be using to literally do anything else. You could be improving your rally, how much health you get back from rally. You can be upping your strength, but no, you're going to use it on Cost Parasite. But and the thing that I find weird is that it completely melts your bullet count. You need bullets to use this thing. And it's cool that using the Cost Parasite, you can actually get viscerals easier. Like the timing is a bit easier, but you're going to be sacrificing more bullets to do so. So it's kind of like a give and take thing. Like, would you rather use more bullets to get a good visceral in, or would you just rather actually get your timing down? But this thing scales off faith. So if you're doing a faith build, why would you use this and waste a gem spot when you can just use the Moonlight Greatsword? But this, don't get it twisted though, this weapon actually isn't bad. But like I said before, Bloodborne's strong point is that a lot of the weapons aren't bad. But this is just something that I just believe doesn't have very much use in the game. But let's go ahead and move on to Sekiro. So like I said in my best weapons in every Souls game video, that's something that you're interested in, go ahead and check that out. But since you only get one weapon in Sekiro, which is the sword you get at the very beginning, I'm going to talk about the prosthetics. So I believe that the worst prosthetic in Sekiro is the Divine Abduction. Why? It's because it only works on like a certain amount of enemies in the game. If it worked on every enemy in the game, this would probably be the best prosthetic in the game. If it could melt enemies like this, then it would be ridiculously broken. But it only works on like monk type enemies, which there's not really a lot of those in the game. Like as far as bosses, it only works on like 8 bosses in the game out of like all of them, which is a lot. But it's good at its job, but it has such limited use that I believe that it's fairly useless, especially when you're up against prosthetics like firecrackers, umbrella, the axe that you can break shields with and stuff like that. It's kind of pointless. But let's go ahead and move on to Elden Ring. Just like Bloodborne, a strong point in Elden Ring is that a lot of weapons are very, very good. There's hundreds of weapons that you can choose to fit your playstyle. And I believe that's great. There's so much variety in this game. It's absolutely beautiful. But I believe the worst weapon in this game has to go to the weathered short sword. And I tried not to put like an early game weapon on here because it's early game. Like, of course the weapons aren't going to necessarily be great, but this one is just so lackluster except for one department, and that's aesthetic. The aesthetic of this weapon is actually really cool. It goes with a lot of armor sets and it looks really dope, but other than that, this weapon is absolute trash. You would literally, unless you're going a wretch build, not wretch, I think, yeah, wretch, whatever class that you start off with absolutely nothing, you will literally be better off using the weapon that you just start the game with, opposed to using the weather short sword. And its ability, it's called like face off, something like that. It's terrible. It was worthless. So this weapon is just absolutely worthless. See, watch. This player is gonna go up, new game +7, max level, and he can't even kill a regular weak enemy with a crit attack, which is absolutely crazy. But that's what I believe the worst weapon in Elden Ring is. Just going to the weather short sword. And on top of that, it's like the shortest one. I believe it's the shortest sword in the game. It's wide, but it's short. And the wideness of weapons really doesn't matter that much in this game compared to the length of weapons. But that's pretty much gonna wrap it up for this video, guys. I actually had to re-record the entire thing from scratch, so go ahead and leave a like, comment, subscribe for the effort, man. Raw Man out. Peace.